Imagine someone labeled as history's biggest fool somehow becoming one of America's wealthiest men. Sounds unbelievable, right? Meet Timothy Dexter, a man who, through sheer luck and ridiculous decisions, managed to stumble his way into wealth. He's been called an idiot, a joke, and a genius all in one. But how did a man like this become a millionaire? Today, we're diving into Dexter's wild, baffling, and downright hilarious journey to riches. Born in 1747 in a small Massachusetts town, Timothy Dexter didn't have a promising start. He grew up poor, with little education, and even less social status. People in town saw him as odd, maybe even simple-minded, but Dexter had one thing going for him. He believed he was destined for greatness. No one took him seriously, but Dexter didn't care. He set out to make his mark. After working several odd jobs and barely scraping by, Dexter decided to try his luck in business. With no experience, he bought a small amount of land and sold firewood. It wasn't much, but for him, it was a start. Then, one day, an opportunity landed in his lap, a chance to buy a large shipment of whalebone. Everyone else thought it was worthless, but Dexter had a hunch it might be valuable someday. He was right. Just as he stocked up, whalebone suddenly became wildly popular for making corsets, and he made a fortune overnight. For Dexter, this was only the beginning. With his newfound wealth, Dexter's confidence grew, and he started investing in all kinds of odd products: salt, pepper, blankets, and even bed warmers. His choices baffled everyone around him, and he earned a reputation for making terrible decisions. He didn't understand markets, trends, or even simple business principles. But here's the strange part. Somehow, each time he made what seemed like a disastrous decision, things would turn in his favor. For example, Dexter once bought an enormous amount of salt. He was convinced it would be the next big commodity, but the market collapsed, leaving him with piles of it. Rather than giving up, Dexter got creative and sent the salt to the West Indies, where it was desperately needed to preserve fish. Once again, he turned a loss into a hefty profit, adding another chapter to his growing legend. But perhaps the most legendary and ludicrous move Dexter ever made was his decision to send a shipment of warming pans to the West Indies. Now, these were long-handled pans filled with hot coals, used to warm beds in cold climates. The tropical West Indies had absolutely no use for bed warmers. When he announced his plan, people laughed in his face. Who in their right mind would send warming pans to the Caribbean? They sneered. Dexter's decision seemed like a disaster waiting to happen. But in a twist of fate, when his warming pans arrived, clever locals repurposed them as ladles for the sugar and molasses industry. Dexter made another unexpected fortune. Each time, he took his failures and somehow turned them into gold. People began to think he wasn't just lucky. Maybe he knew something they didn't. Dexter himself began to believe he had some sort of secret gift for business. Flush with success, Dexter's eccentricity only grew. He declared himself the greatest philosopher in the Western world and began commissioning statues of himself and famous historical figures, placing them proudly around his estate. He even wrote a book, A Pickle for the Knowing Ones, which was full of bizarre, rambling thoughts and complaints, written without a single punctuation mark. Readers were so confused by the lack of punctuation that in the second edition, Dexter added a page filled with commas and periods, telling readers to pepper and salt them as they please. He then staged his own funeral, just to see how people would react. A huge crowd came, and Dexter watched the entire scene from a hidden vantage point. However, he was furious when he saw his wife laughing with guests. He revealed himself mid-funeral and publicly scolded her for not grieving properly. In his own strange way, Timothy Dexter beat the odds. He defied the rules of business and common sense, making millions by trusting his gut and a little blind luck. He passed away in 1806, leaving behind a story that no one would forget. Today, Dexter stands as a reminder that sometimes, in the oddest ways, luck and stubborn confidence can rewrite a person's fate. So, was Timothy Dexter a genius or a fool? Maybe a bit of both. His story reminds us that success doesn't always look like what we expect, and sometimes the strangest paths can lead to the most unexpected destinations.
All my wounds begin to howl.